approach. Yes, it's true that they in the border, but they also want more
Houstonians to test our own perceptions of what we hear from candidates. Tonight's event is a recognition of the importance of listening to a variety of national policy concerns and ideas as part of the democratic process in order to make informed decisions while in the voting booth. Your presence here tonight is a reflection of the value you place on the sacred institution of voting and the democratic process. So we thank you again for being here with us tonight. In a moment, you'll hear some important informational news from our sponsors. And we also have quite a program lined up for you this evening for you prior to the candidate debate. So this is gonna be a high energy program, guys. So be prepared to have fun, because we want to take this energy from this place as we prepare to support our Democratic Republic electoral process. So whether you're a campaign volunteer or a precinct worker or just having conversations among friends, all are important to the process. We ask that you listen intently during the debate and engage fellow Houstonians both here and when you leave. But first, before the program gets underway, we got to usher little Jesus into the room, right? so we'd like to begin this evening with the invocation provided by Reverend Lou McElroy, pastor of Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Look, now, they say the Lord, don't everybody get depressed. Now, the Lord said, sing a joyful noise now,
Amen.
so be happy. Be happy that we're here tonight, amen?
Amen.
That's right. Like that kind of preacher. I'm an excited, on fire for Jesus kind of a guy, amen? All right. Look, before we get started and before I pray, I need two words, and that is to say that this election will change the trajectory of our country.
Yes, sir.
But if you are a believer, you have nothing to worry about because it is because of the sovereign hand of God. Where you come in is in Psalm 13 when he says that you cast the lot, but even still that decision belongs to the Lord. So it is our prayer that as we gather tonight, that we are well informed, that we are well educated, but more importantly, that as we cast our vote, we are in the will of God. Amen? Bow your heads, please. Father, Lord, we come in the name of Jesus to give you thanks, to sing praise to your holy name. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to gather here tonight, Lord, as we being members of your body, Lord, and your family, Lord, as we are the instruments in which you work, Lord, your plans and your grace and mercy for us, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity. We thank you for all of the sponsors who are gathered here tonight, who work together to come and bring the community together under one roof, oh Lord, to help educate, to help stimulate, Lord, to help, oh Lord, Heavenly Father, that your will be done. We just pray it is our will, Lord, that we humbly submit to your will. We pray, Lord, that as we listen to this debate, that we are informed, that we would walk away educated. It is our prayer, Lord, that when we do cast our vote, that we would be forever in your will. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please stand and face the front of the room. Gentlemen, remove your hats as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Jacqueline Bostic McElroy to the stage.
Good evening. On behalf of the Missouri City chapter of the Links Incorporated, we would like to welcome you here tonight. The Links Incorporated Missouri City chapter exists to promote and engage in educational, civic, and intercultural activities to enrich the lives of members in the larger community. Today's presidential debate watch party is an important part of the work to ensure we adhere to that mission in a way that benefits our community. So let's tonight's debate spark real conversations about what are true priorities that affect our lives at home and whether the course charted by the candidates is the one we as a nation should pursue. Tonight's event is designed to enable us to hear and compare competitive views regarding the future of our nature. It provides us the opportunity to hear from the candidates, their values, their beliefs, and their visions. But more importantly, we want to hear what they have learned from their conversations with everyday Americans and how that will inform their way forward. And let us have a conversation about what we hear regarding their views for the future of our nation and determine how we put those plans to work here at home. I want to thank you all for being here.
So, speaking on behalf of the NAACP will be Miss Argentina James.
Is it time? Is it time?
They hear us? Can they hear us?
Just because the length of your hair ain't long, and they often criticize you for your skin tone. Gonna hold your head high, cause you a pretty woman. Get your runway stride home and keep it going. Girl, live your life.
Good evening. First of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. I have my link memorabilia on, and I'm one of those women that wear many hats. And the hats that we wear is all about advocacy for our community. On behalf of the NAACP, those 5 letters that have been around more than 100 years, fighting for all of our rights, is happy to support and help get out the vote, make sure you're educated about the issues, and call us if you have an issues with voting, because we have a whole support team that when you go out to vote, if you have any issues with voting, NAACP has a team ready to help you. It's all about making sure that our democracy stays just that, a democracy. And so as we listen tonight and we hear the national views and the policies that are being discussed, it is about you taking that information and making sure that you're using that and it helps inform how and whom you select to vote. Doesn't matter who you vote for, you need to vote because you can't complain if the vote doesn't come out or if the election doesn't come out to support your candidate if you didn't vote. Tonight we have on these screens where you can check to see if you are registered to vote. So we have the QR codes where you can make sure that you check. It's votetexas.gov. Make sure, because over 1 million names have been purged from the Texas rosters. Now, granted, 600,000 of them were dead people, but the other 400 plus are somewhere because they either haven't voted or they have too many addresses and they're in suspense. You can still vote, but you got to go figure out what address that you put in and you registered a couple of times, so it's in suspension because it don't know where you are. The point is, be an informed, educated voter, and please don't wait till November the 5th and go to the polls and you hadn't checked out to make sure that you are ready and willing and able to vote. Again, thank you so much. We're happy to present that. We have other things that we're going to be presenting and partnering with the Links Incorporated. The Links is a national partner with the NAACP. And it is important to the NAACP to partner with organizations like the Links, like the sororities, like the fraternities, to make sure that we're all working together on the battlefield. Thank you again, and we really hope that you engage yourself on some of the debates that are happening tonight and make sure that we have prizes that we're going to be giving out tonight. We're really excited. So I just wanted to make sure that I shared that with you, and thank you so much.
Let 'em get mad. They gon' hate anyway, don't you get that? Doesn't matter if you're going along with their plan. They'll never be happy 'cause they're not happy with the
On behalf of our media sponsor, Houston Defender,
I'm talking about
Rashonda
big
Tate
bad
with a special guest.
This is
It's okay, show yourself some
Is that my theme
Oh,
music?
Ms. Rice.
All right. Good evening. I am Rashonda Tate, and I am the managing editor of the Houston Defender, a newspaper that has served the Houston community for more than 90 years. We are pleased. Yes, that deserves a round of applause. And they say if people don't clap for you, you clap for yourself. We are pleased to join with KTSU and the Vibe to serve as your media sponsors for this evening's event. Now, as we work toward our centennial, we are well aware that in today's news and information space, you have to be more than a newspaper. We provide up-to-date information across a variety of platforms, including social media, email, print, video, and events such as this one tonight. Whether the opinion leader is at a university or a member of the neighborhood association, we will continue to be a critical vehicle for the sharing of information and ideas and the shattering of misinformation and disinformation. Now, we want you to have a great time tonight, and we want to help you kick that off a little bit. Argentina mentioned that we had a couple of door prizes, so I'm going to kick us off with one. And I would like, is Skyon here? Skyon, are you in the audience? Skyon Johnson.
I'll take it.
Is she here? Hi, Skyon.
I'll take
So
it too.
she
I don't know what it
is,
but I'll take it.
she's like, what you calling me for? Because we are excited that you registered to vote tonight. You were the first one.
Please, if you have not gotten registered.
And we know a little cash goes a long way. So on behalf of the Defender, we'd love to give you a little something, something.
Another thing, I was just listening to Argentina. There's a QR code
Yes.
that you can scan. Hopefully, we'll put that up on our
And we
can text
want
debate to
individuals like
713-313-4345.
Skya. Am I saying your name right? Skya. We want individuals like Skya and her friends and old and young and new voters to register to vote. If you're new to Houston, register to vote. Even if you think you are already registered, we want you to check your voter registration. Now, we know tonight's event is a nonpartisan event, and we will continue to tell you that it does not matter who you vote for. We will continue to say that so we don't get in trouble. It does not matter who you vote for. Just vote. So we're going to keep saying that. But tonight we want you to enjoy yourself, sit back, relax. In addition to being managing editor, I am also an author and a poet, and I usually take moments like this to share with you inspiration through the spoken word. But a sister has been doing this a while, so what I am doing is turning the mantle over to my daughter, Maya Billingsley, who is here to present an original spoken word piece.
So we're about to hear some poetry.
And that's her daughter.
That's
I
her
never
daughter.
met her yet.
Good
Talking about
evening.
poetry before we started, right?
This is the original poem called Sunday's Best to the Polls. Mama made me wear those itchy white tights and shiny pointed shoes. She slicked my hair, lotioned my elbows. Smelling of black coffee, she whispered her ear into my ear. We wear our Sunday's best for freedom. Sunday's best is a mindset that we walk loud and proud into the voting booth where we take pride and recognize the lives that were lost just so we could vote, just so we could taste our freedom. Freedom is in the spaces that we've carved out in historically black colleges, in the Divine Nine, in the foundations our ancestors built. On rocky soil, through broken generational trauma, our freedom still stands. We wear it to our black jobs in the courtroom, in the classroom, positions they never thought we'd fill. Black jobs, black heritage, the black struggle for freedom we've long deserved. In a country we built with callous hands and rough cuticles, we slam the gavel, change the course of history. Change is inevitable. We can count 500 jelly beans and recite the Constitution backwards while tap dancing away the jungle jitters. Like a cream suit on Easter, we get the people talking. Let's get the people voting. Let's show up, show out, and let our voices be heard. Because when the cage birds sing of freedom and the Sunday's best stays freshly pressed, the bells will ring of justice. And we, you, me, we will make a difference. It's how we bring about that change. My Sunday's best keeps my hand over my heart, freedom in my mind, and my eyes on the prize as I fulfill my ancestors' wildest dream and vote. Just vote. Thank you.
That was a beautiful piece.
And you know what? She was on point with that. By the way, my name is Donna Franklin.
And I'm Marcus Session.
Thank you, Maya.
Part of the Impact Houston Live team.
Real quick, we do have the Defender has some flyers that if you fill out, we have some t-shirts that we're giving away just for you to fill out, and we do have more door prizes we'll be giving away later. So we're going to continue this program, and we will want to get hype now. DJ, do your thing.
Rashonda has a t-shirt.
So, when we talk
to the point where they could go
Scan that
digitally
QR
register
code
to vote with the QR code.
to see if you are registered to vote.
100,000.
It's a lot
something
of
like
them.
that, yeah.
And we don't want you to go vote and your name is not there.
It's such a pivotal time to do it. Though. We're
I'm
talking
trying to
about
tell
the
you.
way the Governor Abbott purged the voter registration list here in Texas.
Absolutely. And while they're getting ready to stroll, Marcus and I were having a discussion about this whole election process for the presidential race for 2024.
Right.
We have not seen anything like this in our time.
Well, of course, this is a very unprecedented time. You have
Yes, it is.
you have the first black woman who's running for president, and she actually has a nice chance of winning. Right, she has a lot of momentum following her this election season. So it's good to see how all this unfolds.
Okay, wait a minute. What happened right here? Something happened. Okay, there it is. Well, there we go. So, but Marcus, not only do we have the first African American female who is a product of an HBCU, and she's a product of a Divine Nine.
Right.
I never thought I would see that in my lifetime.
Yeah. You know, I actually knew we would see it in our lifetime because it's just the natural progression of the way our country has gone over the last 75 to 100 years. We're starting to see black people progress more and more, and usually black women, black men. We're starting to step into that stratosphere to where, you know, we're constantly earning gains towards that total equality stamp.
Right.
And so with things like this happening, with Kamala Harris winning, or with her accepting the presidential bid and becoming the forerunner as the Democratic nominee, we start to see how those things are taking place.
Also, not only did I with Kamala running for the presidency, I'm looking at our former president who's running for re-election.
Yes.
And he is, this isn't something that we're saying, he is a convicted felon.
No, the facts are true. But still, you have a certain section of supporters who really don't care. They look at the crimes as minuscule, in a sense.
But I don't understand how that can happen. Because I guarantee you, Marcus, that it wouldn't be the same for
Of course not. So
Kamala.
So, you know, on my YouTube page, we did a live talk, and we were talking about whether or not black men are starting to go more conservative as opposed to democratic.
And why is that?
The consensus, well, when you look at economics, right? So black men tend to be more entrepreneurial, right? So conservative agendas usually favor small business, right? And they usually favor low taxes for small businesses and for individuals who are in business for themselves. And so I can definitely understand why a lot of black men will go towards the right as opposed to the left. But what's going on with black women? Are black women deciding? And I think now is a pivotal moment where they're not, right? So they see Kamala Harris get the bid, and I see is sweeping support. But how do you think that's going to play out when we're talking about voters who are lined up in the middle?
It's that middle thing. It's that middle, because there are a lot of them now in the middle than I believe than ever before, because of the vast contrast between both candidates.
Yeah. Well, a lot of questions are going to have to be answered tonight. One of the main questions is, how do you think each candidate's tax policy, when we talk about economics, how does each candidate's tax policy resonate with the middle class? Right? You have Donald Trump, who wants to extend tax cuts to corporations.
And what about the tariffs? Did you hear about the tariffs?
And the tariffs, right. So, of course, you know, we're talking about simple economics. That's going to boost everything for the middle and the working class, right? We have Kamala Harris, who wants to increase the capital gains tax on the wealthy, right? And that's capital gains tax is when you sell, you know, property like real estate, things like that, right? And so she wants to increase the taxes on those for the wealthy. So when you talk about economics, usually, no matter what presidency, no matter whether there's a liberal or conservative in office, you always have to think about the middle class taking the hit, and the middle class has historically always taken a hit. So
But it's the middle class who made this country.
it's the middle class who made this country,
Yes.
the working class, right?
Right.
So that is something that the American people need to listen for tonight to see how each candidate addresses the middle class when it comes to the economic issue.
But I'm really anxious to see just how this debate is going to turn out. Now, she's a former DA.
She's a former DA, so
she knows how to present.
She knows how to talk. She knows how to bait. We're talking about
All
opening
of that.
arguments, closing arguments.
All of
She's
that.
done all of that. And as a practitioner of the law myself,
Yes.
of course I haven't been through the ringer like her. But when I tell you, even in law school, doing the mock trials and debates and things like that, they're very difficult to do. It's very difficult to hold composure,
Right.
especially when you have someone on the other side who's going to be talking and over talking you. And I'm only saying that because historically that's what the former president has done.
Right.
So it's going to be real interesting tonight to see how she maintains her composure, to see how she responds, and also to see if he actually pivots and changes from his typical rantical style of debating and actually listens and sticks to the issues.
Well, I know. I remember when he debated Hillary, and he was just looming over her, trying to ruffle her feathers. That to me was so rude.
Yeah. But he's done that to every single person he's debated.
I know.
He did it to Joe.
I know.
But
I know.
so one of the main issues that the American people is going to want to hear about is the abortion issue. Now, as a man, I
And
tend
you
to
look. Let me just say this. I'm
You
gonna say
always
this
get
right
on
here.
this one.
I'm even holding his hand on this one. I'm gonna say this right here. So when we had a show, and those of you who are just tuning in and you've never heard our show, we're hosts of a show called Impact Houston Live, which is every Saturday morning on the Choice KTSU 90.9, beginning at 7 a.m. It is a 2-hour-long show. And when we talk about women's rights,
we get in there.
when we talk about women's rights,
Right.
I go all the way
She
left.
goes in, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. She goes in, and she sends me and Chris through the ringer because she needs to let us know that we need to know what we're talking about.
And I am
Talk
so
about this
delighted
issue.
that I have incredible co-hosts because they let me go in. They let me go in.
No, it's like her letting us because she the boss lady. So,
I'm not
but no,
I'm
but
not the boss when we on the air, though.
But that is an important issue. We're talking about the abortion issue, right? The both candidates are going to have to answer the question. What's going on, Chris? How you doing, brother?
Our other co-host is here.
He has arrived, and we're
Yes.
trying to get him mic'd up and everything.
And you are live. Hi, Chris.
Are live.
Hello, Miss Donna.
Brother
Hello,
Chris
Attorney
Johnson.
Market Sessions, man. Good evening to everyone.
Brother, it's good to see you, man.
Man, it's good to see you all as well, and it's good to be here as we're just watching civic engagement and democracy. I think
At its finest.
at work at its finest, and so
And brother-
just to be here is a great thing.
And brother, to catch you up to speed, we were talking about, we were going through the issues. We're talking about the first issue we pointed out was the economic issue, and how both candidates had to actually put their stamp on that issue tonight. Where you have Donald Trump, who's wanting to lower taxes for the corporations. You have Kamala Harris, who's promised to increase capital gains tax on the wealthy. Of course, when they sell assets and they sell real estate, those taxes will be higher on them. But I think most of the American people want to hear what's going to happen for the middle class, because that's the portion or segment of the population who usually gets it the roughest.
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that has consistently been said by voters, particularly undecided voters, on the stance on the economy, to your point, Marcus, that you just said, one of the things that people will be looking at is how both candidates really interface with one another. Will we see a civil debate, or will we see a battle royale between the two?
Brother, there's going to be nothing civil about this. Because you know how the other one likes to fight. You know how a former president likes. And I'm not. This is not me taking a partisan side.
And let me just interject right here. This is what we do on our show, because I am between two incredible human beings. One comes from a lawyer perspective, and the other one comes from community activist minister perspective. And to see both of those come together, because Marcus is more of a realist. And so is Chris.
We're both realists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, and so thank you for that, Miss Donna. I think the realism of the situation is apparent, really to every American in this country. The stakes are high, as we all know.
Absolutely.
What we're looking at is a contest between two very differing ideologies of America. And so one is more populist, that's former President Trump, and then you have Mrs. Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, who is more liberal, but I believe we're seeing her shift to the center of the aisle as much as she can go in terms of a progressive agenda. And so this is all going to be very interesting to watch as we see this play out. I think the biggest test of the night is going to be for former President Trump, how he handles Vice President Harris,
yes,
without offending
women,
and so some would say, yeah.
Well, so he, like you said, he's not debating her, right? He's debating every woman who thinks he's a misogynist tonight.
Yeah. Well, and so here's the balancing act that former President Trump has to walk, the tightrope that he has to walk. How does he debate Vice President Harris without offending women?
Yeah.
And particularly black women and more progressive women.
Do you think?
And that's a tightrope.
But do you think there will be?
With the resolution today, what is being argued is intervention.
I don't think he will resort to name calling. I think he's been through the woodshed on this. That's what you do when you prepare witnesses for the stand. You woodshed them. But I think he's been through the woodshed on this. I don't think he's going to resort to name calling. If he's smart, he will stick to the issues.
Yeah. There was a USA Today Post op-ed, and one of the things they said in this post op-ed is that Vice President Harris also faces danger in the debate as well. And experts warn that the televised debate is going to be more perilous for Vice President Harris, who is still introducing herself to a large segment of Americans. And so this is, for Ms. Harris, I think, a pivotal moment in her campaign for the presidency. And I believe that she's up to the challenge for that.
Yeah.
However, she is going to be introducing herself to a larger segment of Americans who may not be familiar with her from a policy perspective.
But here's the problem, though. Here's the problem, like you said, she is absolutely introducing herself to the American people tonight, and it's pivotal because we're a couple of months out from actually voting for a new president, right? We know who Donald Trump is.
Sure.
The American people know exactly what he's going to come with tonight. It's like looking at Duke basketball. It's like looking at the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan was playing. We know what they're going to do, the triangle. We know what he's going to do. Now, it's very pivotal because we don't know what she's going to do. We don't know how she's going to respond, and she only has one opportunity to get it right, and unfortunately, that opportunity is tonight.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you know what else? Here's my other thing.
The mothers and children of black people. And where is this legislation when we need the lives of our children in such protection? So for these reasons, we urge a nation ballot.
Yeah.
She was just the vice president.
So you can look tonight. You can expect Donald Trump to relate all of Joe Biden's supposed failures to Kamala Harris. He's going to link those. So how well she pivots from that, and how well she not only separates herself, but establishes her own position and her own political stances on the key issues is going to be really important for her tonight.
Yeah. You know, Marcus, one of the things that's important is understanding the voting preferences amongst the demographic groups. You know, when you break this race down in terms of gender, according to a Pew Research poll, men are more likely to support. More likely to prefer Trump, former President
Well,
Trump,
men and women.
than
We
Harris.
talked about that.
And I
so-
don't understand
men.
why.
And so that is one thing to look for in terms of gender, how that message is communicated amongst gender. The other thing is education. Voters who have a bachelor's degree versus voters who don't have a bachelor's degree, and how they break down in terms of their voting preferences and education as well. All of these are demographics that are going to impact this race. This race is tight. I mean, it is down to the wire. And so while these are divisive issues for some, these are the nuances of democracy that we have to pay attention to in terms of how this debate is going to go out and how this race is going to play out.
Well, we actually spoke on that before you joined us, Chris, and we were talking about whether or not the black male vote is leaning more towards a conservative agenda.
Conservative, and we're like, where did that come from?
You know what? I don't want to speculate or give anecdotal comments about where it possibly could have come from. I think that, you know, when Mr. Trump says that he's pulling 14% of the black vote, that speaks to itself.
That's a high number.
That is a high number.
That's a high number.
I don't think that is a byproduct of messaging. I think it's more of a byproduct of the economic condition that a segment of African Americans and minorities find themselves in this country in, right? I mean, when you drive in hoods across the United States, when you drive in ghettos across America, ain't nothing good going on.
But
there is no economic growth, and that's not a Joe Biden problem. That's not a Vice President Kamala Harris problem. That's not a Donald Trump problem. That's an American problem. And so that economic stagnation that some feel in terms of you know, their dollar, grocery prices are still going up, Marcus, as you know.
Cost of living.
Inflation is now only beginning to wane. You know, reports are coming out of the Fed that interest rates are now beginning to take a dive.
But that always happens prior to an election cycle.
Correct.
Always
correct.
So.
And therein is the point, Marcus, right? That people are looking for something outside of the norm, right? You know better than anyone that we're living in inflationary times. When you talk about the cost of living going up, when you talk about salaries not going up, you know, all of these.
That's what keeps people at that closer to that poverty level.
Yes.
But like I said, these are real issues affecting the American people, and most importantly, the middle class, right? And that economic issue is one of the most important issues. But also another important issue is the abortion issue, right? We're talking about.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Yeah, we're talking about how.
I'm trying not to lose my control.
Yeah, but it's all about how both candidates appeal to the American people when it comes to abortion and reproductive rights of women, right? So, you know, when you have Harris advocating for federal abortion protections while Trump supporting state level regulations like the ones we see going on from state to state now, we see a clear divide. But you do see Kamala taking more of a middle of the line approach when it comes to that, but the focus with her is on the Constitution or congressional protections through legislation. Right?
Yeah.
Federal legislation.
Yeah. And when you look at the breakdown of those top issues, the economy, healthcare, Supreme Court appointments, foreign policy, violent crime, immigration, gun policy, abortion, racial and ethnic inequality, climate change. These are all issues that speak to the type of society that Americans want to see. right? And they are very competing issues. When we talk about specifically, Marcus, to your point, the issue of abortion, especially after that monumental decision that came out of the Supreme Court
decision.
you know, that galvanized women, that galvanized Democrats, that galvanized liberals, and so you know, look for that to be an important issue that and I believe that's going to be an issue that's going to cross those gender lines, right? And so you know, I don't think we should be surprised in terms of polling. You know, if we see conservative women, right, starting to support
to
Vice President,
reverse something like that, it takes literally an act of the Supreme Court, right? Because you're talking about a congressional fix to that abortion issue. You know, you're talking about, you know, overcoming a Senate filibuster where you need over 60 senators to fall in line with that. That's not going to happen, right?
No, it's not.
So, you know, this issue, you know, how we appeal to the states at that point in terms of, you know, federal protection, which, you know, is far from even in our scope of vision. So we have to look towards how we're appealing to these states and how we're appealing to these state legislatures when it comes to that issue. How are they going to outline their policies on this issue to the American people?
Yeah, you know, with the issue of abortion on the state level, to your point, Marcus, conservative states have been clear where they stand on this issue.
And they have been legislatively
clear.
And
they have legislatively been clear, and they have passed the legislation to support their ideology. And so, to your point, you know, for those who are advocates of pro-right or pro-choice, excuse me, and so for those who are proponents of that. The question is federally what is available, right, to try to get around some of the things we're seeing at the state level, right? And so, again, to your point, it's just going to be something that's going to have to be played out really over the next decade in the federal courts.
Now, Ms. Donna, this is an issue, like I said, we've spoken about.
You see, I haven't said a word.
Yeah, you haven't said a word about it, but I want to, you talk to women more than us, and they'll share with you more than they'll share with us. What is the feel? What is the feel you're getting around this issue in terms of both candidates?
Yeah, and I'm even going to take it back to my daughters who are in their early 30s.
Right.
They're voting because they don't want their rights taken away from them. But one thing I know to be true, once you start losing your rights, that's the beginning of a downfall.
Yeah.
They start picking it away one right after the other.
So, Ms. Donna, you know, Pew Research in an article talked about during the year 2020, 67% of voters that supported then Senator Harris and then candidate Biden listed abortion as 60% of Trump supporters listed the abortion issue as the number one issue because they wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade. Now that the decision has returned, the inverse has happened.
Right.
And so now 67 to 69% of Mrs. Harris's, or Vice President Harris's supporters now say that abortion is the number one issue. When you look at Republicans, they say that it's immigration, which is the number one issue. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Let me just say this. When you instill fear in people, the way fear has been instilled in these people when it comes to immigrants, that does become your number one issue because you're scared.
Yes.
You're scared.
Yeah.
And so now let's get back on women's rights. When so many women are let me just say this. When you are pregnant and you're carrying a baby, you have no idea what's going to happen. You can't even predict what's going to happen. Your body goes through so many changes, and it's totally out of your hands. So if something goes wrong, and I'm going to share something private right here. I had a miscarriage. I didn't know what was happening with me. That was the most grueling part. And to know that if my rights were taken away, I don't know what would happen because I had to go to the hospital.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And I had a miscarriage at my house. I was at home. So I didn't know. I knew something was wrong,
Right.
but I
You're
didn't
afraid,
know what
body's changing, you don't know what's going on, right? Yeah.
And then, you know, and then the doctor's hands are tied.
Yeah.
Their hands are, come on, man. That's crazy.
Right.
That's some crazy stuff right there.
But yeah, go ahead, Chris.
You know, the issues around women's health, you know, in specifically abortion, you know, that issue has been an issue historically that this country has been dealing with since the 18th century, in terms of the legality of it, the morality of it, the functionality of it. You know, whether it is, you know, a personal right or whether it is an issue of morality, and wherever you land on the issue is between, you know, that's your decision. But how it is driving and shifting the commentary around this election has been fascinating. Another interesting issue has been and what is, or in the opinions of some, not happening in the border. When you look at
You might cut. I think we're going in and out.
Yeah, we have a lot going on, and so look at all these people in this room.
Yeah, it's a packed house.
Yes, it is.
Is that the councilwoman, Dr. Shabazz?
I couldn't just let you call up Eileen artistic director. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Chris, you know, you began talking about the immigration issue, and that's the issue I really wanted to touch on because, you know, you have Kamala Harris, who has in recent times expressed more bipartisan thoughts behind the border in terms of securing the U.S. border from the south and the openness to funding measures like increased border security and, you know, but a limited wall construction. So when you see her pivoting on these key issues, what do you kind of, you know, make of that?
So, oh, there we go. Okay, we're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're live on YouTube.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I had to show him that.
Oh, man.
He didn't know.
Yikes.
He's like, but you
Uh-oh.
but it's
Uh-oh.
cool.
I thought we were doing democracy in secret.
No, it's cool because then you get to see.
We're not incognito?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, jeez.
No, we
Uh-oh.
live, brother.
Oh,
You
no.
get to see all the faces
Oh,
that
man.
you just made. So
Oh, man. It's
live,
time
my
to
brother.
it's time to go.
My brother, you got to buy your own.
Hey. You know, hey, my sister, man. You know, this is I'm sorry, Marcus. Will you repeat the question again, brother?
No. So we're talking
we took him
about.
off his game, Marcus.
So we're talking about in recent times, Kamala has kind of shifted towards a middle of the road ideology on immigration policy, especially when we talk about the border, right?
Sure.
And increased funding to secure the border, but kind of pulling back on that whole border wall building type
Sure.
of thing, right? So what do you make of her pivot, and how do you think, and what do you think that is in terms of a strategy for her to get the middle?
You know, immigration, the economy and immigration are the top two issues for Americans in this campaign.
And this is an immigration attorney speaking.
And this is hands down. And I don't even like to put them 1 and 2. I just like to say 1 and 1A because they fluctuate. I called an Uber yesterday, Marcus.
How much was it?
Oh man, it was 38 inflationary dollars. It was 38 inflationary.
Uber used to be pretty cheap.
It used to be pretty cheap, not anymore. And so I was riding with the Uber driver, and he, and we just struck up a conversation, and I just, you know, of course, you know, the election came up, and I asked him.
Everything that you think about, everything that you want to think about, everything.
One of the brothers step on the line.
Livelihood has something to do with
What is the number one issue?
local politics. And while all eyes are on the national level, it is so important that
So I was
we
asking
go
him what is the number one
higher
issue
ballot.
in terms
And I tell people all the time, the presidential election will be at the top of the ballot.
And he said the number one
Further
issue
you go
was
down the
immigration.
ballot, the closer those people
Because
are
being
to
from
the
California. it was
And
a
those
huge issue for him
elections
in California.
matter. Make sure you not only
And
cast
so,
your vote for president,
it's
but you
almost like
cast
the
your
break is
vote
even.
all the way down
See,
the
but
ballot.
that's one of the
And I do
main
wanna
issues
take a
that's
moment. I see
purely a
that there are a
federal
couple of
issue,
candidates
right? So
in the room
that's why it's such
for
an
our
important
local
issue.
elections.
States
If
do
you
not
are a
have the right to
candidate
regulate the
on the
borders.
ballot, would
No,
you stand?
no, they don't. But
See, Takashi
when the
Grant
narrative
is here. She's running
regulating the
fast.
border because the federal government
Any
is
other
not doing their
candidates in the
job,
room, make
Well,
yourself
that is a
known, so
very
when people go
populist.
to the
It
ballot,
is.
That is
they
a
can
very
think about you and
populist
casting their
theme.
votes for you.
You know, we have to listen to the messaging that's coming from both parties, right? You know, so for Republicans, for a certain segment of Republicans, in
I say,
particularly
don't believe the
MAGA
hype.
Republicans,
Your vote matters.
it is don't
Not
tread
only
on
does
me.
your vote matter,
It's
we
this
need your
idea
vote.
of
The last
isolationism.
presidential election,
It is this
there
idea
was
of
millions of folks that did not vote.
shutting down our
So people
borders,
are very
making sure that
frustrated
America
our
takes care of
particular
America
state
first.
leans
Right.
one way.
Whereas
But
on
if
the
the
Democratic
people who
progressive
didn't
side,
vote had gone to
it is a
cast
more
their ballot and
you know,
our
progressive,
values were
liberal
being represented, our state could
messaging that talks about inclusion,
and I know we're in
right?
a
Inclusion
nonpartisan
in a way
state,
that
a nonpartisan event,
is
but
not
all of you know Texas is one
readily symbolic of what you would
Texas is
expect coming
red,
from America.
but I
And,
always
and
tell
you
people,
know, these are just, again, these
all
are two
of us go to vote. That could
competing ideas, of course,
could
as
potentially-
we well talked about on the
our
radio
values
show.
could be represented.
Project
Everyone
2025
we
has
knew
factored into this
went to
discussion
vote. And
Yes, it
you know, we like
has.
to say,
a lot.
we don't care who you
And
vote
please, if
for,
you get a
just
chance,
vote.
please go and
I
read
like
that
to say,
987-page
Make sure you vote
manifesto
for people
Yeah.
who
put out by
represent
the
your
Center of
values.
Leadership.
And
It is an
also,
interesting read,
would be remiss if I didn't,
and it lays
recognize
out.
You read the whole thing?
I'm 3/4 through.
the Honorable
Okay.
Councilman
Yeah, I'm 3/4
Carolyn
through. I'm
Evans
3/4
Shabazz.
through.
Well, let's talk about that Saturday.
We
Yeah,
are
yeah,
in
yeah.
District
Well,
B,
you-
the district of
you know what? I
destination
think
is what
that
she calls it.
there's a lot to
Councilmember
dissect in
Shabazz,
that.
good to see
There's
you as
plenty
well.
to dissect.
Right,
How many
good,
people
bad,
know
or
who their
indifferent.
city council member is?
And I think the question for Democrats is where,
Everybody should be raising
where is their project 2025?
Yeah,
And if you
exactly.
don't know
And
who
of
your
course, you
local
know, if
city
Donald
council
Trump wins the
member
White
is,
House, it is
it's
going
really
to be
easy
a
to
Project
find out.
2025
All you have
White
to do
House.
is a simple Google
Oh,
search.
He's made
absolutely.
no. I mean,
Absolutely.
he-
He put that out there.
he has not hidden that message.
No, not at all.
Right. So,
Who represents you on city
very important
council.
issue.
At a
It's
minimum,
very
you
important
should be
how,
receiving your city
you
council
know, of
members'
course,
feedback.
the American people are listening to the messaging of both parties.
things that I see a
And,
lot
and
of
honestly, man, the American people just want to see that their best interest is going to be carried out by whoever is in this White House.
You know what I would like to see? I would like to see all the name calling stuff.
It is bigger than that, and you
Let's cut it out.
You know you're going to get that.
Can you stop
No
with
one
the
is
division?
going to.
You know
We're
you're
all
going to get
different.
that from Don.
We're all different. Yes,
There
we
are
all know
times
that.
when,
But you don't have to keep dividing
the values
and,
of
and treat people like human beings. What happened to that?
you have to think about
Well,
what's
it's funny that you say that, Miss Donna. That era of American politics, sadly, is no more. And
I say it ended with Senator John McCain.
Well, you know what, Marcus, I agree with you, but I'll add to that, Marcus. It ended when when the current president ended his campaign.
Yeah.
And so he literally was the last statesman.
Yeah.
Biden, yes.
Yeah,
Biden
well,
was the
and-
last
He
statesman.
literally was the last statesman.
Yes, he was.
And so not to say that civility does not reign in Congress on a local level. It's just a different day of politics. The messaging is different, which I think was one of the problems that some had with Joe Biden. Right? It wasn't that he wasn't a good man. They just wanted a more, I think,
They wanted to hear
firebrand.
from him more.
Yeah, a more firebrand, a more, I don't want to say combative, but maybe a more vocal president. And a lot of this is influenced by what we see in the news cycle and what we see on cable network news, right? People want someone who can verbalize and articulate but fight at the same time. And I think that when you have a generation as we had coming out of World War II that fought together, they may have disagreed in terms of ideology, but they agreed in terms of nationality.
Well, to your point,
That's right.
To your point, Chris, it is we have a gladiator society, and I
But
say
that's
that
a-
in the sense of we want to have leaders who fight.
Yeah, but that's unfortunate.
It doesn't run from a fight.
It's unfortunate because it's one thing to fight, but it's another thing to fight for common cause.
And last question, as we prepare
It's
to
nothing
launch
wrong
this
when we have
debate,
a debate in the,
what
my mama used to say,
should
whatever
we be looking for to inform
at the house, but when we go outside, we family. And the problem is that when you fight within the halls of government and Congress and
Things that you talk about at
your city hall, yeah, we're fighting against each other, but when we go out to the
I think about
We're family.
and we're leadership, and people have to have leadership that they
to buy a house.
we're always arguing, we're not leading, we're debating.
What are these candidates
This idea that whoever screams the loudest or correct, I think it's a fallacy. Our engineers trying to get us together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It
I
pumps
appreciate
in and pumps out, and we popping in and
Yeah, we
popping out.
apologize
Yeah,
for the technical error.
But you know, there's a lot going on. Where you know, there's another show. Well, it's not a show. It's the opening of the great debate.
Absolutely.
And we're doing our part as your news and public affairs team on the Choice 90.9 KTSU. And is that Lefty? Is that DJ Lefty? Come on, Lefty.
Why he called Lefty? He only uses left hand?
Argentina, while we're waiting on you guys to come up, I'm going to pull another.
Yeah, is that the reason?
We're working through this. We're working through the off and on thing. The popping on, popping off.
We got some money for you.
There is Congresswoman Carolyn Shabazz.
Absolutely.
This is her district.
Yes, it is. Yes, we are in the
sitting
district of
smack
the
dead
destination.
in her district.
Destination D, baby.
District D.
Yes.
You know, and as we look around, we see, as you said, Ms. Donna, Councilwoman Carolyn, Dr. Carolyn Evans Shabazz. We also saw City Controller Chris Hollins. I believe we
I
saw.
didn't see Chris Collins.
Yeah, Chris Hollins was on the side of the. He was talking to someone on the side of the wall.
It's a
We
lot
also
of, it's
had,
a lot of people
we had-
here.
We also had federal judge Vanessa Gilmore.
Yeah.
Wow, Judge Gilmore is here?
Gilmore's
Yes,
here.
she's
Oh,
here.
wow. That's
Yes.
great. That's
Yeah.
great. And we also had Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, she's here. I call her the TV woman. And then, when I
And I don't know
saw her,
if
I
we
said, you know what? Every time they do city council, girl, you are right there. You are
Absolutely.
right there. That's the TV woman.
Attention in the back.
Yeah, but it's
Ask people to come and be seated.
yeah. We're going to ready to start. This is going to be interesting, and we're still going to go live. We're still going to be live during this debate.
I thought we
And
were.
you can go ahead and comment on YouTube. Go ahead and comment because we're going to ask you some questions. Matter of fact, I want to know.
This is a nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan. It is a nonpartisan event.
Second, we respect perspective.
Ground rules.
She's giving the ground rules.
Plan to mobilize, plan to vote, but whatever your perspective here, you are allowed to have it, but you are not allowed to impose it on other people.
We're 7 minutes away.
We have the hashtag Great Debate Watch. So we'd like for you to start pushing out what your thoughts are while you're here tonight about the debate.
Absolutely.
We
We
do
want you to
reserve
put
the
it
right
on YouTube.
to ask anyone to leave if they're being disruptive and they're not respecting the atmosphere. For organizations who are wearing their nonprofit logos, that would be the sororities, the fraternities, the links, the organizations that are represented, the YWCA, all of those are nonprofit organizations. Individually, you are able to voice your position on who you want to vote for and but you can't do it on camera wearing your insignia. So I'm just trying to make sure that when media comes, because we do plan on having media here, additional media here, and you decide that you want to participate in an interview, you should not say who you are voting for with your logo on or present. Now, if you don't have, you can say whatever you want. This is merely trying to provide caution to those who don't know and forgot and get all excited. I just want to make sure we say that. And then finally, this event is sponsored by the Missouri City chapter of the Links Incorporated in partnership with the NAACP.
We are two nonprofit organizations, and we are nonpartisan, with a century or more of voter engagement and voter mobilization. So I say all of that to make sure that we understand the ground rules for tonight. All right? So I'm going to flip it over. Hashtag Great Debate Watch Party. All one word. It's streaming live on KTSU, so you can go to KTSU, and that's how we're going to know to pull prizes throughout the 90 minutes. So make sure that you're streaming and giving your feedback to what you think while the debate is happening. There will be breaks, and we'll have commercial, and we'll dance, and we'll have fun. But again, let's do it in good order. Thank you. DJ, what's my song?
That's DJ Lefty, y'all. Yes.
Still want to know if he's called Lefty because he only DJs with his left hand. Is that what's going on here?
Huh? Okay.
Yeah, you know what? And as we kind of sit in this interlude, I think one of the things to highlight is the changes in confidence that have happened in the candidates on the issues following President Biden's departure from the
And
race.
Donna,
So
I of
voters,
course meant Biden. She has to own up to the Biden administration's any mistakes they made too, and Donald Trump is going to go after her on that.
You know, Martha, they made mistakes. Donald Trump.
Foreign policy. 2 nominees for the Supreme Court. 3, making good decisions on economic policy. 4, making good decisions on abortion policy. And then 5, making wise decisions on immigration policy. And so, I think voters are clear in terms of, especially on the Democratic side, their vote of confidence for Vice President Kamala Harris. When you look at it head to head in terms of outside of the Democratic side of it, again, we see a very, very, very close race. And Ms. Donna, they're saying that this race is going to be down to the wire.
It is going to be down to the wire. It is. It's sad but true, but it is.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here looking at my idol. I remember I had the distinct pleasure of meeting her and taking a picture. That's the one and only Donna Brazile. I absolutely love her.
Yes.
Love her.
Chris, and to go back to the stance on those key issues, talking about foreign policy, those issues are still a two-state Israel, and the issue of the Ukraine, where Trump wants Ukraine to concede the territory to the Russians. I mean, those are big, heavy issues as far as from a humanitarian perspective that the American people want to see where these candidates are going to lie on which side, right? So that's an important issue, and I think Kamala has done a good job of aligning herself with the Biden viewpoint on those issues. And the thing and the thing she's had success in doing, and he hasn't had success, that he didn't have success with in the past, was actually voicing her solutions and voicing where her messaging regarding those issues.
Absolutely, Marcus. And to your point, Ukraine, huge issue in terms of funding and whatnot.
Ending the conflict.
Absolutely, what some would consider to be the incursion of Russia, not respecting the sovereignty of Ukraine. I mean, we could just go on and on about that. Of course, the Israeli-Gaza conflict, which, by the way, is an issue that is a big issue with younger voters in college campuses across this country. How is VP Harris going to handle that? Mr. Trump has been clear on what his stance is. He hasn't been more clear, in my opinion, but he has been clear in his stance. How does she vote on that? When we talk about the South Pacific, relations in Asia, China, Korea, Japan. We look at what's happening in Europe in terms of that conservative wave that's happening in Europe, right? You look at elections in France and across Europe where there has been a conservative wave across Europe, right? how is she going to interact if she is elected with those type of foreign leaders? You know, what is her stance again on things like climate change? I mean, she's been clear on that. Fracking is a huge issue.
It's a huge issue, and she's kind of pulled away from that issue of supporting for cracking.
Right.
Because she realizes it's not a popular position to have with the middle of the line voter.
Absolutely. You know, as we watch the clock, we are counting down 46, 45 seconds to the debate.
I am so eager for this.
Yes.
So
it's like watching a UFC fight about to happen.
Well,
okay, who's your favorite fighter?
Yeah.
Who's my favorite fighter?
I used to like the Bushwhackers.
You talking about WWF wrestling?
Okay, see, I got that all wrong.
Well,
all I know is the WWF.
Well, Ms. Donna, Marcus, as the seconds tick down, closing remarks in terms of what you all expect coming from this debate.
I expect for Kamala to pretty much
own it.
Yeah.
I expect her to own this.
I expect her to be solid on the issues tonight, and I expect Donald Trump to do the same. So I think we're going to see a debate on the issues
We have
tonight.
one person, we selected from a person who actually registered, and it's Lila Carter. Is she still here? You must be present to win. If you're here, come and get your prize.
If you're not present to win, I will take the prize.
She got some of those ear pods.
So you must be in it. Check in to win.
You must be present to win. If you're not here, they belong to. Oh, she's here. She's like, give me my breath.
Here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play.
Chris, any closing remarks from you?
You know what, Brother Marcus, I'm just looking for a very vigorous debate, and just excited to see. To be honest with you, I'm excited to see. I think how Miss Harris comes out, and I'm looking to see how Mr. Trump respectfully handles Vice President Harris.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. we had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out. when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21, that's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to, because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it, because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people are on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot of
are not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just ask
David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have standing.
Fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart, Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approved the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe, because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Well, I must say that was quite interesting.
That was very interesting.
And I want to know, gentlemen, who's eating the cats and dogs?
Well, I don't know who's eating the cats or dogs, but I did
It's
live
in
in China.
Springfield.
I did play in the CBA in China. I lived in China. I saw cats and dogs being eaten there, but there's no evidence of cats and dogs being eaten in these United States of America in any official capacity. But to stick to the debate and what we saw one, Kamala Harris stick to the issues, stick to her stances on key issues, such as her support for a two-state Israel, and the Palestinians having their own place to call home and rebuilding Gaza. So, we see her take her stance on issues like that, and also her double down on issues like border policy, abortion, things of that nature. So I didn't really hear much in the way of policy when it came to what the former president was saying.
Sure.
But you know what,
we
though?
got to move the cheese off the table.
Well, you know what, though? He started off real strong, like, he was kind of being very presidential, but I told Chris was like, yeah, he started, I said, Chris, it's not going to last. It's not going to last. And it didn't. But I'm very delighted. I'm very delighted to be sitting at the table. And for those of you watching us on our live stream and YouTube, you know who this man is. He needs no introduction, but we're going to do it anyway.
Bishop James Dixon.
Yes. Hey, Bishop.
Hey, family.
How are you?
Big brother?
To whatever you want to buy, or whatever you think you need.
Yes.
Congratulations.
I don't even
We got another one.
with the family.
And I'm just pulling up wherever it stops. That's where I call the name. I don't know. So,
oh, wow.
Is there a Kobe McFall?
It's a great night.
McFall?
So
Kobe,
you've been
come on
watching.
up.
What's your
That
initial
black
take on
bag.
what you've seen so far?
Kobe wants some
I was on the
fine
TSU debate team
earplugs.
under Dr. Freeman.
Come on,
And
Kobe,
he
you gotta
is
hurry
telling
up.
He's such an incompetent debater.
Yes.
Kobe.
That any of Dr. Freeman's students
Thank
would
you.
be glad to be on the
Oh,
stage.
I'm sure.
Texas Southern University,
Vice
strong.
President Kamala Harris is
All right.
prepared, and you're looking at what I
Then
would
we
consider
have,
a
and I want to make sure I'm
difficulty
saying this right.
because intelligence has a difficult time
Azalee?
having a debate with
Is it
ignorance.
Azalee?
That is hard.
Is Azalee here?
That's very hard.
You can't be here first. She got to be here. Okay. All
Creates
right.
their own
All right.
reality in
Lauren
order to
Scott.
have a conversation.
Is Lauren
because
Scott
they're
still
not
here?
having a reality conversation.
Lauren Scott? You have to come
I
up.
think the nation
Can't
needs
see
to
you.
understand
Say, hoo,
what
we
deficit
won.
we're in.
Come on.
That
Get some
this is the
excitement.
United States
Give
of
me
America,
that,
the superpower
white
of
bag.
the world, and this is the kind of debate that we have.
Congratulations.
For the office of
Again.
the presidency. An individual who refuses to acknowledge the fact that he lost an election by a great percentage.
And these are the facts. We're
We're
not
going to
speaking
give the
about
rest
partisan.
of
We're just
them away.
speaking
We
about
got
facts
about
right
5 more
now.
that we're going to give away before the end of the night. Before tonight, there's a couple announcements I want to make.
Fraud.
The link.
Right.
And so I'm just
Your
suggesting
ideas?
that
Okay.
when a person creates their alt reality and you're trying to have a debate about some
All right.
issues.
So, there's a
I
couple of
think we're in a
announcements.
very
The
difficult
Links
place as a nation,
Incorporated
and hopefully that,
is having a
American
trilogy
citizens understand that.
on campus at Texas Southern University.
Bishop Dixon,
Please
we
sign
heard
up for that.
many
For
issues
the
come
students who
up
are
in the
here,
first half of this
it's
debate.
another opportunity for us to
Many
engage
around
you
the
on
economy, which,
political issues
as you
and
well know, is a
register to
huge
vote and
issue, especially
get
in
your
minority
position on
communities.
what you think about this upcoming election.
I found it interesting that
The
Mr.
other
Trump
thing I do
took
want to do is I want to give a
success
shout
for
out to
numbers
KTSU.
that really can be attributed to former
truly
President Barack Obama.
Our community
Talk
radio
about
station.
talk
I wanna
about the
thank
importance of
Ernest Walker,
fact-checking
who is the
as
managing
both
director
candidates
of
are
the
talking, particularly
KTSU.
Mr. Trump,
Thank
who
you
has
so
spouted
much
some things that
for
are
making sure that
not
you're
accurate.
here and the
and I
community
think
is
that
getting
is
the
a
information.
very
They're running it live
made.
stream, and we're getting
in my world,
feedback.
I
So
preach the
thank you
Bible,
so
right?
much.
Right.
Now,
And,
if you want,
it's interesting that there's so many people
we
who
really
don't read
want
the
you to
Bible.
give us your feedback about the debate.
So
anyone stands up
that's
saying
where I'm
what the
also
Bible
reading the
says,
names from text
believe it.
debate.
they
And then
swallow it.
Sure, sure.
Because they've
using the
never read
number
it.
713-313-4354. All you have to do is text it, and then it will give you the form. Takes 2 minutes to fill out.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Was a result of Barack Obama's policies.
Right, right.
If you don't know that,
Right.
you listen to that rhetoric and believe it. And I think it's also important. It's also important to think about what the Trump policies did cause economically.
Yes.
And to fact check it. I mean, this is not a partisan conversation, but if we fact check, I think we'll understand that the rhetoric that he's spewing is just not factually based.
Right.
And that's, again, how do you debate a person who creates a reality, but the difference is an uninformed public
Yes.
can
Yes.
be persuaded.
And I think now more than ever, we have a situation where the public is educated on this type of thing. And it's difficult to kind of get those lies to seep through the cracks because people are more aware now, especially with the instantaneous fact checking that's going on, which I think was a perfect addition to this debate in particular.
And Marcus, I want to speak to the issue around the eating of pets.
Man.
That's a baseless claim that Vice President candidate J.D. Vance introduced, and that's really around a group of Haitian immigrants. Yeah. Bishop, I want you to talk to the importance of messaging. You just said something that was key.
Billion, they're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying.
Unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell.
Bishop Dixon, we're going to go back to the debate, but thank you so much, and we hope to have you here after the debate to get some more commentary for you. Thank you, Bishop James Dixon.
I miss you.
President of the NAACP here in Houston, civil rights leader now.
Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interests for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking...
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She
please.
has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Thank you,
what
Mr.
her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your
Yes.
3rd time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Correct.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, We're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
In terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after
Sitting at
this.
the table with us is the one and only.
None other than.
Go ahead, Marcus. Introduce him.
This is State Rep Jarvis Johnson, my big brother, on the show with us today. How you doing, sir?
TSU alum.
TSU alum.
TSU in the house.
Okay.
Doing good. How you doing?
Oh, can't complain. So you've been watching this debate with us. You've been seeing what was going on. What's your initial take or your closing take on what you've been seeing?
I don't know if this has been a debate or an assault. At the end of the day, I mean,
Who's assaulting who?
Donald Trump. This is a boxing match. The referee would have called the match a long time ago. She didn't body him. She didn't uppercut him, hit him across, and he's not even going to answer.
It's like Bootney Farnsworth against 30th Street Black.
Be careful now. Bootney gets he
get hypnotized.
He get hypnotized and come in here and win one. So be careful about that. But yeah, but it's not. I mean, you can obviously see the difference between someone who is informed, someone who has a plan, versus somebody who just wants to point a finger and go, what about this? What about this? What about it? And then just continues to redirect.
You know, I thought he came out pretty poised at the beginning, and I thought he was going to make a shift from his typical, stance of, I'm just going to, call names, yell out belligerent lies, but he kept to the script the further along.
He is who he is.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, he's going to do better. I said, no, he's not.
What's that old parable about the scorpion and the turtle?
He can say what he's going to.
Right.
At the end of the day, he's going to always revert back to who he truly
Absolutely, absolutely. So who else do we have here with us?
Wait a minute. I don't want to. You know, age is a beautiful thing with me, so I know who she is, but I don't want to get her title wrong. So that's why I haven't said it. Because I don't want to mess up her title.
We're going to take the last two. This is your $50 gift.
Go ahead, you say your title. Go ahead.
Hello, Miss Donna Frank.
Tiger.
It's always a pleasure.
Always. But I don't want to get your title wrong.
President of the Texas Southern University
Yes,
National Alumni
ma'am.
Association.
Well, I need to be paying you some dues then. So
Want me to get that by the end of the night?
you're gonna get it from me by the end of the night. I'm gonna give you.
He's an alumni too.
Yes, 2 master's degrees from the Texas Southern University. I definitely need it. Yes.
Okay.
So
First of all, thank you so much for putting this on.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We looked out, we was like, wow, it's a full house.
It is
It
full
was
house.
standing room only.
But I want to ask you a question. So you're a black female. You're looking at this debate. What is your take on what you've seen on this assault? Like
I wholeheartely agree with Jarvis.
Rep. Johnson
This is the old school Mike Tyson fight.
Right.
You know, one hit a quitter. Like, she is annihilating him. She's standing up for us as humans in a manner in which he just doesn't seem to relate to. Right? Just basic human decency is what she's exhibiting tonight. And as a black woman, I am thoroughly proud. This is the first time in history we've ever seen a woman, period, debate a man in a presidential debate, right? And
Well, I knew coming in, he was debating a seasoned attorney. I'm an attorney, but I'm not seasoned. This is a seasoned attorney who you're trying to argue with.
You can't touch her on that.
And not even a seasoned attorney, a prosecutor. Like, she is
A prosecutor.
tracking and having her receipts, her data, and her facts. And because he's not a person who is a factual human being,
Right.
and, and speaks truth, she's annihilating him.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Do you think by the end of this night that people will be even more excited?
I know I'm excited. I feel like for undecided voters, it's a clear decision for them tonight of who would be a better leader, who would be a better president. And I think even for Republicans, if they were honest with themselves, they would absolutely feel that she is the best candidate for this position, just as a leader. She is stepping up in a way that she just doesn't have.
And I had another question for Jarvis before he went.
Jarvis over here doing the Omega.
I had another question for Jarvis. So coming in tonight, it was very important that they attack those issues for the middle of the line voter. How do you think both candidates did in terms of that task?
I think those are
and the other that is focused on
educated and
past
informed.
and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes
Having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, Are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Oh, my goodness. We're closing out. That was, you know, after a while, I got tired of listening. I'm not going to say
it got a little redundant.
I'm just going to say I just got tired of listening.
Well, you know what, Ms. Donna, I think what we heard in tonight's debate was two very different messages.
All right, everyone. Just a few more minutes.
You know, Vice President Harris talked about the importance of integrity, character, morality, the importance of having a moral compass in leadership. Former President Trump focused more on the economy, immigration, those hot item, hot topics that he knows resonate with his base. And it was very interesting. When we talk about fact-checking, let's start there. You know, Mr. Trump talked about a debunked story regarding
They want to hear the comments.
animals being eaten.
All right, okay.
I think
Asian immigrants allegedly eating animals. When it was first introduced by J.D. Vance, that has been disproven. Also spoken by January 6th. So there's a lot to unpack.
Please fill out the debate.
When it came down to the January 6th, David Muir asked him twice.
Correct.
Are you responsible for this? Are you going to take? He's not.
Sure. To just angry.
What is it? I forgot the Five Guys. What do they call them? The Brooklyn Five.
I don't think we've heard a lot of
no remorse.
All right.
No, nothing. Now, I'm going to say this.
People that put this on, we're just gonna
President Biden
go back to that.
did some things back in the 60s against black people that wasn't cute. He apologized for all of that. He apologized for all of that. I doubt very seriously if you see 45 apologize for anything.
Well, and accountability is very important.
Oh, it means everything.
You have to
it
have
means
people,
everything.
You have to take
you have to take accountable for yourself.
Yes.
For yourself, because your people have to take accountability for themselves.
Absolutely.
And if you don't show that as a leader, then what are you doing?
Yeah. I thought what was remarkable tonight is how well she was able to keep poise and not journey down the road of slaughtering the character of the man in terms of just name calling and childish aspirations. I thought she did a good job of sticking to the policy script.
You can tell that time was at the tip of her tongue.
Yeah, she wanted to bring it out several times. But she said, you know what, the longer I stick to policy, the more I stick to policy, and what I'm actually going to do for the American people, the better off I am in this debate.
So, y'all know that if Chris Christie would have ran for president, I was going to vote for him. But since he bailed out, Chris Christie said, if she sticks to what she knows, she will win.
Well, one of the interesting things, talking points that you heard from Mr. Trump tonight, he stuck to that populist narrative, that populist agenda in terms of everything from immigration to policy. You heard him talk to the military might of America. You heard him speak to the isolationist fervor that some have. You also heard him speak to immigration. Likewise, you heard Ms. Harris stick to the narrative of being that more centralist, moderate candidate in the middle of the road. And I think that was very interesting. You saw her shift a little bit on Friday. You heard her shift in terms of the whole defund the police. And I think that shows a leadership, maturity, and a recognition on her part that she does need to come a little bit more center of the road. And she did that, right? Mr. Trump stuck to his talking points, right? Factual.
Come on now.
There were some personal remarks made, but I think all of us expected coming in. One of the things that was interesting,
But let me just say this. Can y'all hear me?
A lot of Americans really want to hear.
Isn't it refreshing
so
to
it's really in
have
Gaza.
a black sister
Issues around foreign policy, right? I was extremely impressed with the level of depth that Ms.
tonight across the world.
Prior to that, I think that was her.
Well, she doubled down on her stance. That's what she always played on. She always played on those stances in terms of immigration and foreign policy. And she doubled down on it tonight, but she not only doubled down on it, she got very specific about what she wanted to do. And I thought that was a win-win for her tonight because he had no policy. Even a couple instances, he said, I have nothing.
No, he said, I'm not president. I don't have a policy.
He said for health care, he's going to create a policy when he gets in office. He has no. You don't show up to a debate in front of the American people without a policy.
Right.
You have something. You don't show up in front of the American people and say, I don't have a policy, but I will get one. The American people we do not want to hear that at this point in time.
And the election is 56 days away.
Yeah.
So are you going to develop this plan in 56 days?
You ain't got
after
none.
you get elected?
You ain't got none.
Like, to your point, the American people want to hear what your plan is today.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have a plan, then we know what
That's a red flag if you don't have a plan on debate night.
Yeah. That's why you're here.
Yes.
Is to show the American people what your plan is.
Yeah.
Have them buy into what your plan is. So when they get to November 5th and they cast their ballot, they know what your plan
And I
is.
question whether or not he prepared for this debate. And like I said, it's not a partisan take, but I question whether or not he truly prepared for this debate.
So Donald
No, I've been watching it. No, he did not. And they kept asking him, are you going to study and prepare for this? He said, no, there's no need to.
Because of his approach to public speaking and governing, which is more extemporaneous.
Right.
And arbitrary.
The issue with being an extemporaneous speaker is that you have to be well-read. You cannot speak extemporaneously if there's nothing there to speak.
I don't even know what that word means, Chris, but I know it means something good.
Right? And so you see Mr. Trump being who Mr. Trump has been.
Yeah.
Likewise, to Marcus's point, Ms. Harris was extremely poised, extremely articulate, areas.
Like we knew she would be.
Times when she could have taken debate, she didn't. And let's give credit credit to Mr. Trump. He was incredibly posed
at the beginning.
I'm gonna tell you what. I've been saying this. I've been saying this for the last two breaks. I've been saying this for the last two breaks. Watch this. When it first came on, he goes, Chris, wow, look at him. And Marcus was going, oh, he's looking good. I said, that ain't gonna last.
It didn't last.
It didn't last.
So once she started attacking,
Yeah.
in a way that really got up under her skin, right? It wasn't a verbal attack, but she started to pinpoint the things that
but
he
you know,
had not done.
but for me, I'm an athlete. I'm a former athlete. I'm a basketball guy. I was looking for a dogfight, not a blowout.
Oh no, absolutely.
That was a blowout, but I was looking for a dogfight, and I thought he was going to come out. I thought he was going to be more well-read and more well-versed on his policy issues. And again, to come out and say, for healthcare, I don't have a plan. You're telling the American people you are not ready to be president of the United States of America.
But you know what, though? He should have listened to his team, because his team kept telling him.
Well, there lies the problem. When you don't feel you have to listen to anyone, when you're your own boss, when you're the master of your own universe, you're the servant of none.
And that worked out so well for her because she came out like a boxer and she just kept jabbing at the ribs. Just over and over.
She had the lead jab working all night.
And it kept antagonizing him, and it really just threw him off what he thought his game was going to be.
And every now and then she'd throw overhand right.
Yeah, and he retreated back to regular Donald Trump, right?
That's all he knows how to be. He can't be nothing else.
Let me, I'd like to ask, because you were here in the room. Let's talk about some of the reactions from black women in the room. Because when
you ain't here?
We're trying to do good radio. We're trying to do substantive radio. I know Ms. Donald's like, brother, please.
I heard it. I heard it all.
Let's talk about some of the response from black women. First, we'll start with you, and then we'll move to Ms. Donald. What was some of the unspoken body language that you kind of picked up on between Mr. Trump and Ms. Harris?
Body language between of course, Kamala is strong black woman. No matter what Donald Trump says about her, that is a black woman, okay? And she looked at him like a black woman would look at somebody and say, are you crazy? You know, and it took everything in her, like, black women, our face doesn't lie, right? It says what we want to say but what we can't say. Sure. And it was at the tip of her tongue sometimes, especially when she paused and she said, this former president, right? Every black woman in America knew what she wanted to say. and her facial expressions were just quintessential, us. And I sat behind a row of black women, and all of our reactions were the same when, of course, especially when the moderators, the few times they fact-checked, right? But when they did, fact-check him and get him correct, of course, we're looking at each other like, all right now, yes. Because, and the whole place just kind of, it felt like church for a minute when the pastor's making a good point and everybody like, yes, right? That's what it felt like every time the moderators would correct and fact-check, especially Donald Trump said it was 11 million. David Muir said it was 11 million immigrants, and he was like, no, it's more. No, they fact-check. They know what they're doing, and so. Yeah, the black women around the room, it was like being at church. It was a great feeling that we all collectively come together for our sister because we know what she really wants to say but can't.
Like being at church, huh?
Let's talk about some of the issues that were brought up. Healthcare, abortion, huge issue, particularly for women, right? Minority women in particular. Let's talk about how what was your scorecard between Vice President Harris and former President Trump in terms of their responses?
Oh, my scorecard. He completely failed because I don't know of any woman in this earth that would have an abortion at 9 months. That was just absolutely unfactual. It does not happen.
It was hyperbole. It was a trail of hyperbole we really didn't need to travel down.
No.
And he really lost a lot of a big section of that middle of the line vote by raising that issue.
Because there's no doctor that would ever do that, right?
It's murder. It's called murder.
It's called murder. And I'm so glad that the moderators fact-checked him on that to say that does not happen, because that would just be another lie that's perpetuated out there. That's not, it's categorically untrue.
One of the things that Mr. Trump talked about was the ban on abortion that is on record that he said he would support. He then walked that back and said he would not support.
Well, he said he supported the 6-week bans because it was to show support or disapproval of the other extreme, which is allowing babies to be killed
at 7, 8, 9
7, 8,
months.
9 months, and when they're out of the womb, which is a total lie.
Yeah. So when the moderator asked him specifically about the national ban, abortion ban, Mr. Trump said he was not in support of it. That goes against what he had said earlier.
Well, he said he wasn't in support of it because they already did what they intended to do, which was turn the rights of abortion back to the states to decide. So he said he no longer. So pretty much he's washed his hands of that issue. Well, that's not what the American people want to hear.
Correct.
Well, the challenge Mr. Trump has is that what he said tonight was a contradiction with what he had said in weeks past.
He does that a lot.
Right.
Yes.
And so when you talk about that national abortion ban, which he now says he would not support, when you talk about the Project 25, which he said he was not a part of,
Says he hasn't read it. Well,
Yeah. It
Too many pages.
Yeah.
Somebody briefed him on it, I'm sure.
987 pages.
Yes.
It seems like we saw Mr. Trump pivoting on issues that in the first debate he was a staunch advocate of. Do you think that Mr. Trump has had to rethink his position on certain issues because of Ms. Harris?
For sure. Of course, women have been very vocal across this country about our body, our choice, all right? But I think in him also taking that stance, he's also gonna upset a lot of his supporters because they are very staunch conservatives, right? And they absolutely, don't want abortion to in the states to be allowed, on the federal level to be allowed at all. And so
it's one thing to pivot in a debate, which is totally normal, but you have to expect when you're going to have to pivot, and you expect when you're going to have to pivot when you prepare properly for a debate. What we saw tonight was one person very prepared for a debate and another person going up there doing what we like to call wing it. And you cannot wing a debate when you're going against a seasoned prosecutor.
And see, she pivoted, but she did it well because she was prepared.
She was prepared for the pivots.
Right? She even quoted the amount of fracking that happens in Pennsylvania, in the same state that they're having that. So when she said that, I was like, oh, sis came ready.
And here's the crazy thing. It doesn't take much to prepare for this debate. You have a team of people around you helping you to do this, that are posting the issues, telling you which way you need to go on the issues to satisfy your constituents, your supporters, but also to try and get that middle vote, because that's what it's going to come down to this election, that middle of the line vote. People who are undecided. Do I want to go liberal? Do I want to go conservative? I'm hearing all these things appeal to me tonight, and tonight only one person appealed to them, in my opinion.
There's a term politically that is used when a candidate is trying to communicate to his or her constituents.
That's my dude. Now Chris Christie is on the screen. I was letting her know.
Yeah, Donna.
We still on the air?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
I said it publicly. I like Chris Christie.
So we heard Donald Trump do a lot of dog whistling, right? You hear him say, well, hey, I don't have a plan, but here's what we did with Obamacare.
He did nothing with Obamacare. Nothing was repealed. Nothing was changed.
Correct. But there is an entire stratosphere of alternative news that Donald Trump constituency is invested in that we know not of, right? And so you consistently heard him speak to that narrative. You heard him talk about Charlottesville, complete reimagining of what happened in Charlottesville.
Good people on both sides.
Good people on both sides, which was completely false, right? COVID, complete reimagining of that narrative.
Didn't believe it until he caught it.
And so I say that to speak to Marcus's very astute point about preparation and how it's viewed. For Donald Trump, however he prepared is however he prepared for this particular debate.
And that's how he's going to prepare to run the country.
We got to wrap it up.
We got to wrap it up. We can go on forever about this, but if you want to hear the rest of it, please tune in Saturday morning from 7 to 9. Every Saturday morning from 7 to 9 on KTSU 90.9, your community-supported radio station. We will be having these discussions, these debates. Chris will be dropping the knowledge with all the vocabulary, and I'll just be trying to make it work. So
Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you, and good night.
Peace.